Welcome back to Families in Action on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm Cary Quashen along with Bob. And before we went on break, we were talking about we're starting with an adolescent.
Right.
Parents find out they're in high-risk behavior, they're using drugs. First thing, they don't know what to do. So what do? They find out who's a good therapist. They take them to a good therapist. They see him for an hour once a week. The therapist says, "Why do you do it?" "Well, I'm depressed." They send him to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist gives, "You're a good kid. You're depressed. Here's some meds." Gives him some meds. The kid goes to school, and what's he doing?
Well, he's getting high.
Now he's
Still getting high.
Yeah. So the ability of the medication to work probably is not going to happen. It's going to counteract it. The ability of this great therapist that he's seeing once a week for an hour.
For that process to sink in may not even happen because of the drug use.
And you got to remember, by the time you find out that your child's using or drinking, so is everyone they know.
Right. And they've been doing it. Statistics say that by the time you find out your teenager is using drugs, they've been doing it for 18 months.
That's a pretty darn good statistic, too.
So a year and a half they've been hiding it well.
I was talking to someone that their kid got caught at school, and they go to Tide, and they have to go to Action. And the kid said, "Yeah, it was my first time." And Mom really believed it. So did Dad. And I brought the kid into a room and said, "I'm going to test you. We're going to do a quantitative test. We're going to know what you've done." Right. And the kid started crying. He says, "You're going to find a lot more than you think."
Right.
"How long have you been using?" "About a year and a half."
That's right.
And that's real. That's basically what we see all the time, isn't it?
Right. I mean, it's not like that. There are some kids, the first time they use, they just take off with it, and they cannot not get in trouble. Like, it's pretty obvious that they're using. But most kids, the great majority of kids who use, it's not every day at first, and it's not.
And they hide it. Well,
and there's not dramatic changes in their lifestyle at first, and they try to hold it together. And that's part of the problem in dealing with it, is by the time a kid's been doing it for 18 months and starts to get caught, they're going, "What? It's not causing any problems in my life." Because they've been doing it for a year and a half without any real problems.
I was speaking to a father today, and he says the kid needs to come into rehab. It's clear.
Right.
And he was saying, "Is my kid going to learn anything worse?" And you know what my
we always
was.
get right. Is that your kid's already hanging out. He's already in that environment anyway.
Exactly. But we don't want to believe that our kids are as bad as the other kids.
Of course not.
And that's what gets in so many people's way. Right. I don't want my kid in that program with those kids. I'm sorry, but your kid is one of those kids.
Well, and it's important for anybody, adult or adolescent, parent or otherwise, to understand that just because somebody is using drugs or drinking, there's no bad in that. The behavior sucks, and the behavior is what gets them in trouble. But you don't have a bad kid here. So the idea that I'm going to put my kid in with these bad kids just goes out the window. And you need to understand that it's the behavior. It's the drug use that's causing all the problems, and we need to intervene in that drug use so that these wonderful kids can begin to express themselves in a more healthy manner.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I tell people all the time. Yeah, we have, especially like our support group up here.
Right.
All the cool kids in Santa Clarita end up there.
Yeah.
So when parents say, I'm afraid, these might be the kids that got your kid in trouble, but these are definitely the kids now that'll help your kid get out of trouble.
Yeah, and give them the idea that doing the right thing is cool.
Doing the right thing is cool. Yeah. Taking a chip for staying clean for a week or 30 days or 60 days. Getting a good love note, which was what we do in those groups, so people know that, hey, this guy's trying. Kids like that stuff.
Yeah.
So
if we have the perfect intervention, right? It's really important to understand that the person who's using or drinking or has the problem is at the center of that intervention. But the most important pieces in that intervention are the people that surround that person that are actually doing the intervention.
Well, if somebody's drinking or using or into a real funk, depression, or any of that stuff, that person's in trouble. We know that. But everybody that cares about that person directly is affected.
Right. And it's important that when a family gets together or some other loved ones or friends or whatever get together and try to help someone, that they are on the same page. That the family members are talking to each other. They have a clear-cut plan. They know exactly what to say. And if it gets frustrating, we don't react with anger. It always comes from a place of love. And that, we're all here to help the person who's being intervened on. And if that formula or ingredient comes together, interventions are always successful anyway.
Always successful, yes.
Because even if the person's, you've done a bunch of them, and I've had people lock themselves in bathrooms in their house, and I'm not coming out. I've had them run out of the house.
I've done interventions
before, right?
through the doors.
Right. And sometimes that's what it looks like, is like, the person who's using will say something to the effect of, forget you, in stronger words maybe, right? Forget you, I don't
Yes.
have a problem, everybody back off, leave me alone. And they may even take off. And what happens is, if the family or whoever the loved ones are on the same page, we all stand back on the same page and we just wait. And now the resources and the enabling behavior and all of that stuff get cut off, and the person who just ran away after a day or a week will say, uh-oh,
Right.
like I need those people to live my life, and I better come on back and start talking about it.
Yeah, problem is, and I always tell that when interventions go that route, I've done hundreds, and I think one person took a week to go in.
Okay.
So if you do it right, they're gonna do what they need to do. Problem is if they don't and they leave and they run and say, I'm done, hit the heck with all of you guys, and then they call in 3 days saying, do you miss me yet? Yes, I do. People give up.
Well, right. They're not. They don't hold fast to their boundaries,
So
right?
they got to hold fast to their boundaries and what they've promised. And if they do that, almost always they'll go and do what they have to do.
Right. Right.
Almost always.
Well,
it might take a few days, but almost always.
And you've said this many times, and it's absolutely the truth, is that there's not a person in the world who is using drugs and alcohol that is happy 100% of the time with their use. And they have those moments of clarity.
Yeah.
Even kids, even the teenagers using, they have these moments of clarity where they stand back and go, God, I wish I was like everybody else.
Right.
I wish I wasn't so miserable.
It's a lonely disease.
Right,
When
absolutely.
they're lying in bed at night, it's a disease of loneliness. It really is. You can be in a room with 1,000 people and feel all alone.
So after the intervention, we will come back talking about what treatment looks like. This is Families in Action, brought to you on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to Families in Action, brought to you on our hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. If you're just joining us, we're just talking about what treatment looks like. We've been talking about interventions and those come in many different forms.
But it's important for people to understand that interventions come in many different forms. It depends on the individual. They will dictate what you have to do. Because like you said, Bob, you can't be drinking alcoholically or using drugs addictively and be happy.
Right.
So we know when those people are doing that stuff, they have many moments of clarity where they say, I wish.
Well, and most interventions, most people in treatment, the intervention comes as a surprise. Not because the family's going, surprise, we have an intervention, but because most of them come in the form of being arrested, having a medical problem, getting in a car crash, being called in at work, not being able to get to work. There's a lot of different interventions. It's not all like we think about.
No, I had somebody asked me to do an intervention a couple of weeks ago, and I said, let me hear more about this story. And what we decided is I didn't need to do a major formal intervention.
Right.
Invite this guy to lunch. You, the father, me, and him will sit down. The kid he's not a kid, he's 30-something years old. He's coming into treatment May 3rd. He speaks to me every day.
Right.
And he is going to come. I have no doubt. There was real good, legitimate reasons why it's May 3rd. I agree with him.
So now that we've, now that somebody is ready, or maybe not ready, but going anyway.
By the way, he said thank you.
Thank you for doing it this way as opposed to.
Well, he said thank you for doing
That's
it
right.
anyway.
That's right.
I can't live this way.
So once somebody goes through that process and they're ready to go, right? Whether it's immediately or I'm going to talk to you every day, how do we determine, or how does any facility or anybody determine what is the best level of care and what is the best treatment?
There's all kinds of different treatment levels of treatment when it comes to somebody that's drinking or using. Some people can just say, you know what, let me call somebody from a 12-step meeting.
Okay.
And you'll go to AA or NA meetings, and hey, that might work. Other people might have to go see a therapist and really talk to them and then go to meetings. And some people need to go to what you call intensive outpatient. Now, that's
Right.
to me is one of the best, because that's a place where you live at home, you go to work. If you're a kid, you go to school, you take care of all your business, right?
Right.
But you're going to meetings 3 times a week for 3 hours each time that deal with specifically alcohol and drugs, relapse prevention, impulse control, anger management, and the structure and support that you need to be able to go out there and go to meetings and find sponsors
Right.
and do all the
In the
good
midst,
stuff. And
in
you're
the
held
midst of living,
accountable.
in the midst of living life
In
and
the
facing the
midst of-
stressors of every day, right? Yeah.
But now, well, let's not do but, because but erases everything I
Okay.
said before that.
All right.
There also are other people that maybe are in a more dangerous predicament or do not have the structured discipline or
At home,
support
yeah.
that they need at home to be able to do it in an outpatient.
Well, there's a lot of factors. I mean, the first thing that we determine coming in is safety.
Of course.
So we're going to look at, or any place is going to look at, number one, are they medically safe? Detox symptoms. Are there any medical issues?
Let's talk a little bit about detox
Okay.
too, because that's also another dangerous situation. Let's pick alcohol for a minute and benzos.
Okay, by far the most dangerous to withdraw off of, alcohol and benzos. And the reason for that is because there's a lot of seizures. You can have seizures coming off of those. You can have heart problems, high blood pressure. There's a bunch of different medical conditions.
Hallucinations. I mean,
Yeah.
we can go on for days, but statistics say, we'll just say alcohol, 20% of people that really need a medical detox that don't get it can die.
That's right. A
So-
20% fatality rate.
So we do not want to play with that. So we always have to look at alcohol as one of the most dangerous drugs there are to detox and recover from. Also benzos.
Right. And there are some, there are different levels of management for detox as well. Someone may be so severe that they need to go into a medical facility for a couple of days and be medically detoxed. And then some may have to go into a place and be what's called subacute
Right.
detoxed, which is medication management, but still living in the environment of interacting with other people. And
Which
all
is
that
what
stuff.
we do.
Correct. And then there is also some people can be detoxed on an outpatient basis with
Correct.
medications.
Right.
It just depends.
And depending on the level of support that they have when they leave the outpatient.
Right.
Because with no support and being alone or being in a home where there's people drinking or it becomes more dangerous, and we have to take all that into account.
And then the other part of safety is we're talking about emotional safety. So we have to determine whether or not a person is either actively suicidal or homicidal, can take care of themselves as far as showering, brushing their teeth, feeding themselves, things like that. So,
And that people say, well, that sounds crazy. Have you ever seen anyone kicking heroin?
right. They're not eating, they're not showering, they're not doing a lot of stuff.
No, they're
Right.
laying in bed sweating. They
Right.
feel like they're jumping out of their skin. They got the runs. They're nauseous. I mean, I can go on for days. Alcohol, a whole lot worse.
Right.
Benzos, a whole lot worse.
So a lot of times emotional instability comes very closely behind detox or even without a detox, and people will become either actively suicidal or homicidal, or they can't take care of themselves. That is a determining factor for an immediate, at least an evaluation by a psychiatrist, maybe even a stay in a behavioral health unit, 72 hours.
I'll tell you, when we get phone calls and somebody's been on a crystal meth binge,
Oh, man.
it's pretty darn hard to bring them straight into rehab.
A lot of hallucinations, a lot of paranoia, a lot of
You could put
distorted realities.
They look literally like they're having a psychotic break.
Right.
And it becomes pretty dangerous. So, and there's no real detox for that. The real detox for that is crashing, sleeping.
Right, but the dangerous part with methamphetamine is the psychosis that goes
Exactly.
on. Because people on methamphetamine, if they've been on a run like that, oftentimes will believe the paranoia. So they think people are after them, following them, or they think people are chasing them or watching them, or they're out to get them. Things like that will come along. So
I've done interventions in homes
Right.
where the whole bedroom blackened out, the tin foil on the windows, thinking there's leprechauns in trees that are out to get them. In fact, I did a TV show with Montel Williams about those two people back east.
Right.
They kept calling and calling, saying that they were lost. Their Volkswagen had capsized, and they were freezing to death. This was on CNN and everywhere else, and they couldn't track them. The satellites were down, and the guy called 3 times. We're freezing to death. Well, anyways, they both died.
Right.
And they were half a block from town, and their car wasn't broken. They
But-
thought it was, but they were so paranoid from being awake for 3 days, not eating right and stuff, that they really believed that they were miles away, their car was broken, and they ended up freezing to death.
Right. And was it crystal meth?
Yes.
Yeah, crystal meth. And that's those are the sort of things that we need to look for when somebody's coming in, is to make sure, first of all, that they're safe. And then the other factors that come in are things like the support that you talked about. Is their living environment safe for them to be able to manage their treatment at home
Right.
and an outpatient basis? Or are they homeless? Do they have any means? I mean, there's a lot of different factors that come in that will determine appropriate level of care.
Right after our break.
This is Families in Action, brought to you on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.